Nice to be here. My first time in Prague, but I've seen some of you around, so really nice to be here. I would like to discuss scaling. I've been working for almost 17 years now in big organizations where they're trying to coach transformation, and that comes with some challenges. Just a disclaimer, we are going to solve absolutely nothing. I'm just sharing observations, and hopefully we can refine together some of my questions and some of my, like an action review. So what is the working assumption is that you get assigned to a team or a couple of teams, you get your coaching agreement in place, you have your key metrics, you design your experiments, you're trying to map a way to improve the team's ways of working, whatever that means, for every company in every context. However, if for whatever reason things go well, they just want you to do that again and again, assuming that you just copy and paste. If you did well for 4 teams, what would stop you doing the same for 40 teams? And this is not a capacity issue. This is not, instead of having one Louisa, just hire 10 more people, because the process is not linear. And I understand, it was mentioned one of the talks yesterday, that transformation is an ongoing journey, it doesn't end. That's very true. However, especially when you come from finance, transformation budget does end. You don't have all the time in the world. Most of the times, the Agile coaches, we don't have specific teams, and we need to transform and help the teams by influence. We don't come from a place of authority. And when you are in a highly regulated environment, an industry, that's a very different game to play. So the working scenario is you have people with diverse skills, most probably in different locations, and most probably working on something very similar. Usually the employers that I've been working for, they started the transformation from IT, because no matter what you do, at some point you are going to end up with IT application or system or some kind of interaction. You cannot escape us. And the question becomes, how do you scale up or down, because you need to remain agile? So there are scenarios where you need to scale down. How do you do that when you have, instead of one team, let's say, multiply that by 1,300 teams? In my case, it was 1,336 teams. And because, at least in the UK where I'm based, I understand the long name, gave it away that I'm Greek, but I live in London for over a decade. The next question when they were discussing scaling is, whatever you did for one team, just copy and paste. And they take that from product delivery world. This is not how coaching works. It's not just put more people on the team and just have the added resources, budget, people, whatever they need. So one way to address that is to, and I'm touching back to the session yesterday, if you were lucky enough to watch the presentation about Kant and Aristotle, about the rules that they need to be universal. So if you dig a little bit down, regardless of the industry and the teams and the context, what is the 2% of truth that remains truth regardless of the context is where you should focus on. Because when you scale, you're missing out 2 great helps. First of all, you still have diverse skills, a lot of people, but you're missing out the most valuable players. You cannot find them. You cannot identify them. And if they are doing really good in their career, most probably they don't want to be part of your coaching tree. So if you have a team, in my case, 66,000 engineers, my team, like wider audience, that they need to understand where you're going with the transformation, what's the benefit. There is no way for me to find who is actually, invested in this transformation and who wants to discuss ways of working when we have real things to do, real work to do. So if you just go back to the basics, all the companies, regardless of the industries, I think they're striving for 3 goals. They need to deliver value faster, empower teams, and improve customer satisfaction. And that's a pretty good standard. However, it's very generic. You could take these 3 components and create a vision and a mission statement for any kind of industry in any market. I don't know, it could be true even for Church of Greece. I don't know, you cannot build on that because coaching has to do with boundaries of the scope and you need to be more specific on how you design the experiments. So if you build up a little bit, what I was thinking is, okay, you have many people, many different teams, again, diverse skills, brilliant. They know what to do and they were hired to do something very, very specific, and now they have to work with other people that they're doing something very different and very specific as well. And how do they start playing together? Because in my experience, you need to frame it as a game, otherwise you've lost them. In most companies that I've joined, they were already, when I joined, under at least second attempt of Agile transformation. So the moment you went into a room to discuss agility or transformation, people were rolling their eyes already. You didn't have time to finish your sentence. So I think what makes the difference when you're scaling is to start questioning and challenging things that they are very common in corporate jargon. Value, for example. It could mean very, very different things, and we need to be very clear how we use it and what we actually mean. This, for example, product value, business value, customer value, sometimes they overlap. They're not the same. 2018, Facebook, there was a scandal with Cambridge Analytica. So they monetized the data that they had from their service. If their vision and mission was to make more money, to go for the business value, I would challenge that, yep, they did the right thing. But they missed out the opportunity to be a trusted service. And they paid the price. If someone was here a little bit more suspicious than me, I would say that their rebranding came after that, and it had to do with people losing their trust. If you remember, the previous logo was people on a map connected. The narrative was that Mark who just wanted to be able to catch up with his college friends traveling around the world. This is not the narrative anymore, even for people who are not into IT. So we need to make sure what do we mean when we say value, what we really are after. Then the empowerment of teams becomes also challenging because this is where we start entering the fluffy world of coaching based on what the corporate world thinks. Empowering means accountability. It's not just to make decisions because, by the way, you cannot really make decisions in a corporate environment. There are so fragmented teams and you have such fragmented perception of how this world, this ecosystem works that you cannot really find anyone who has a clear, a deep understanding of how things work. And this is why in big corporations, especially in banks, I must admit, we are very risk averse. Almost 23% of the employees in big corporations, they are new employees, which means they've been with the firm less than 2 years. So if you want to touch code that was written 10 years ago, I wouldn't touch it. We want to stay as far as possible from that. And the issue that we need to decide when discussing scaling, and do you want to empower teams to make decisions to improve on what they're already doing? Or do you want to take the next level up and say, okay, what we're doing, is it relatable? Does it make sense for the market? Very, very interesting companies, amazing in what they're doing, they fell flat to the face. Blockbusters, Kodak, Nokia at some point, they were exceptional what they were doing, but they missed the train of you don't work on the thing that is the next thing. You need to be one step ahead. And the customer satisfaction needs to be inclusive in a way that we have a story that builds on everyone's skills. It's not just the high tech. If you think about it, customer satisfaction and customer-friendly product is Apple. When you think of Apple, you don't think of an engineer. You think of that, I don't need to give you instructions how to use it. It's user-friendly. I don't need to explain anything. You don't need any kind of manual. This is what, in my mind, a narrative means. So one complexity that comes with size is that you don't have a person, let alone a team, that has a clear, a deep understanding of how things work. And you still need the strategic view. You need to make decisions. At some point, some way, companies make decisions all the time for budget, for who do we need to hire, how do we need to organize ourselves. And this is a real issue. This is the everyday work. So to go away from the corporate jargon and also go away from the agile jargon, because it doesn't help a lot when you're speaking to engineers, we start using sport analogies. So at some point, one way or another, even if you're not an Olympic champion, you will have seen some kind of sport. And what we're saying is that, you know, whoever is in the team, they have different skills and we need them all. They may not play the same game or even at the same time, but they need to be aligned. And they need to understand what we're going for. The combination of the skills aligned to the shared objective is what builds the strategy. And this is a feedback loop. So when we lead strategy to execution, it means that if I'm saying, okay, this is what I think we should do for all the thousands of teams, I'm waiting for the teams to tell me, you know what, no, that's not relevant. We said something like that 3 months ago, but now this is not where we should go because the market changed, because we have new technology, we have new systems, or for whatever reason. And this is where coaching becomes indispensable, because this is the only way to align all these people towards the strategic view. And I'm using my words very carefully, as best as I can as a non-native speaker. I'm not discussing consensus. In big companies, you cannot wait for people to agree on everything. It's a very expensive hobby. You don't have the time, it's going to be a disaster. But you need to make sure that we are aligned. For example, IT big decisions. We are doing public cloud, great. You cannot have someone in, I don't know, 4 teams in Singapore say, no, we decided we want to go hybrid. It doesn't work this way, because there are safety issues, security issues, brand reputation. It's a very good reason why in banks we have a lot of paperwork and processes. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but there is a valid reason. And one of the issues that we have when we need to create a strategy, we need to talk money. We cannot avoid that discussion. So because agile coaches, and I think most type of coaches in the corporate world, can be sadly perceived as, you know, doing the fluffy thing. We only care about soft skills and post-its, which is true in some cases. Why not? I don't see the problem with that. However, we need to make sure and visible that it's evident the value that we bring. The easiest way is to discuss money. If you go into the trap of, I want exactly, and I think we touched yesterday in Andreas' talk about, you can link directly the value from Jira boards. No, you cannot. I mean, you can try. It's going to be an educational experience, but this is not going to work too well. The reason being that everybody wants to know what everyone else is doing, but if you say, okay, all the teams need to do that, otherwise I don't understand the strategy, I don't have the overview, then people start pulling out. Because they all want to do, no, this team needs to get measured, not mine, I'm doing great. So if you want to have metrics, obviously you're going to have the slides after, but discussing money and discussing that it's not just about delivery. When you're in a big corporation, as in most companies, delivery is the evident, that we shouldn't discuss about that. Yes, you are hired because you are delivering something, given the support that you have. So if we go back to how you build the strategies, assuming that there are a lot of legacy systems, you cannot find your most valuable players, there are too many people, and obviously you don't have a team or a specific budget, because why would you? You start to say, okay, there are 3 things that I need to address. The one is structure. I need to understand product boundaries. Because in big corporations, people, more often than not, they work on very similar things without even knowing each other. UX design can be a nightmare because you can find at least 4 different departments that are working the same stuff, and they've never met each other. They're not aware of something similar happening. And then when you have the structure, which is informed by the strategy, you can discuss culture. It doesn't go the other way around. You cannot start experimenting in highly regulated environment just because you decided that this is the way to go. You need boundaries, you need a structured way so people can easily find the map around the complexity. And then you start scaling down the processes. For example, when you're a new hire, depending on who you ask, if you ask your manager, how do I raise a ticket, service ticket? They will tell you what they know. When I had to do a value stream mapping, if you wanted to raise a ticket in public cloud, there were 27 different applications, internal in-house applications to do that, and 7 of them, they were actively used. So when you wanted to find the value stream and the workflows, it was impossible. And then we had to go back and say, okay, just pick one. They're literally doing the same work, just create something that you like, or just use one, so we can have a backlog that makes sense. Because we had thousands of tickets, very similar, different people were reviewing, were doing the triage, and you could not figure out what you really need to build and who is doing what. So in the coaching strategies, when you move away from delivery and you looking to build on potential and excellence, I have listed, I'm not going to go through in detail, you can see it in your own time if you're interested, but you need to be very specific on the benefit. And the benefit on the user, on the teams. It's not the benefit for the leadership. When we say, yeah, we need to be transparent because the CEO needs to be able to understand who is doing what exactly, that's not transformation. That's just giving a better update, better quality update to the CEO. You don't need an agile transformation for that. And then you need to come with metrics. And metrics is a tricky one because in every team and every department, they come up with their own metrics and their own ideas how they want to change the world. And when you're big corporations, you don't have any memory. If 23% of people are new people, and you have all these legacy systems, and nobody has a clue how this system has this kind of architecture, you don't touch architecture, you don't touch the code, you just wait and hope nobody breaks anything really bad. And this is the most difficult discussion about metrics, because there are some things that you use as a coaching tool. Yes, you have a new team, you're discussing velocity. Great. But velocity is a metric that you can game anytime you want. So you cannot say anything valuable. There's no actionable insight based on that. What you can say is that regardless who is working on that product, the time to market is improved since last quarter. That is measurable, tangible, and nobody can say no. You know when you launched a new feature or a product. It's not debatable. Velocity is debatable. Story points, yes. Anything that it doesn't, that you can argue on that, it's not a good idea. And also, I find very beneficial to build some kind of historic data, which means that I need to be able to compare that last quarter you had 4 releases and now you have 3. Is this something going on? Do you need anything, or just a bad month? But if I need to compare, you had 4 releases and the other department had 83 story points delivered, I don't know how to compare. I need some consistency. Again, I'm not saying standardization, not possible in big organizations, but I am saying consistency. In our case, we just went for 8 metrics. And we said, okay, how many releases did you have last month? How many things did you break? How many incidents? Did anybody die? Or how's the reputation? What does the customer say? Things that they're not debatable. And you do that for all the 3 pillars. And this makes sense for Agile coaches. Hopefully, I'm not alone. But you need to change the narrative. Because agility focuses mainly on IT, or at least in my experience, maybe you have something else in mind, you need to start changing the vocabulary. And it's not just the marketing stuff, it's not just, oh, we are one big happy family and we're all into this together, but you need to speak to engineers, in my case, to a language that they understand. So what do they understand? In my experience, systems. In UK, we use a lot the Gartner, PACE, layered architecture design, so you are talking to them in a way that they can relate, they understand, and they can have an opinion. And you want them to have an opinion, otherwise they will just shut you out and it will be just another lady who wants to change us and she thinks she knows better than us. That's not the case, most of the times. And this, I'm going to discuss. This is a diagram that describes the strategic approach, how we innovate in technology. Because in technology where things go so fast and change so fast, if you keep insisting on improving on stuff, you're going to be left behind. Like, easily, very, very fast. Again, BlackBerry. If you're old enough, there was a time BlackBerry was everywhere. And now, I don't know if teenagers know that it existed. So, in essence, what they say, it says there is a matrix of systems that they need to be aligned. So when you're telling me that you want agile transformation, you cannot allow 27 different systems to raise a ticket for public cloud, which is every day. It means that you really haven't thought through how to deliver on, to do as you preach. And this cascades down and also creates a feedback loop that I understand the strategies, I'm very clear what I'm looking for. Is it business, product value, what am I going for? And then you figure out the organizational systems, how to use them to leverage what you want to do and to align them with the goals. And then you need to become the best in what you're doing. But touching back to the roadmaps discussion earlier, what you're doing is the outcome. I don't ever want to describe that you need to have an application that is pink and it has a green button and, I don't know, it sings a song every time you touch it. I want to describe that there is a way, application or whatever is the next big thing, that solves a customer's problem. Maybe today that's an application. Maybe 3 years from now, application is a very old-fashioned thing that nobody uses. I don't know what's next, but you need to have the eyes on the ball. And this way, you create different systems of records if you follow this approach, the diagram architecture, and you start coaching at different levels, different type of coaching. We're not, for everyone, we cannot do everything at the same time and the same way. This is the beauty of agility, that you can respond to change, and if all goes well, you can create change. So there are the systems of record, which would be an ERP system, anything that is organization-wide and everybody uses, it's critical to your business. This is how your business works, and it needs to be governed. Again, highly regulated environment, but either way, IT has a lot of security issues. And this is the life cycle of decades. You need to be exceptional at what you do. So in that case, for these kind of teams working in these kind of systems, you need to coach them for performance. If I have an engineer that they are exceptional, I don't want them to become Scrum Master. I want them to understand the language, if I'm lucky and if they want to, but I want them to be exceptional at what they do. And this is the difference between people who get coached and people who don't get coached. Because you give them, with coaching, you present them the options available to them. And this is very, very powerful. And for this kind of systems, you need responsibilities and frameworks and all the good stuff in comparison to systems of differentiation where it is specific to your industry. So all the things that you do for your customer to get the value and feel better and happier and more accomplished, this is where you need to coach for transformation. Because this is where you need to have the open discussion about what makes you better. Why do I need to choose your applications compared to your competitors? What do you bring to the table? And this is when we start discussing agility, business agility, that you need to be able to shift focus as needed. And this is where we need to discuss capabilities. What kind of CVs we were looking at 10 years ago for engineers, they're completely irrelevant now. Completely. Unless you kept up with the market, you wouldn't get a job with a CV that you had 10 years ago, and you could be amazing 10 years ago. So this is where you need to coach for transformation, to find the gaps and fill them in as possible. And this is the difficult part for corporations, the innovation. Because innovation means, it doesn't mean happy-go-lucky, and we've learned a lot of things from pharmaceuticals. So a lot of people from pharmaceuticals, especially with the crisis management, with the pandemic, they were brought in banks to say, okay, we're also a highly regulated environment. How did you switch the gears so fast? How do you go, suddenly you have millions and you know exactly, you have the right people, the right skills for something very specific, and you deliver, and I'm not even going into the supply chain and procurement, and that was something, and it's not very easy to do. And this is where you start about experimentation. This is where you leave room for the teams to breathe. But again, you need to have some kind of structure in the madness. Otherwise, it will be happy-go-lucky, which is not the way to go. You need to record, if I can say, all the ways that things could go wrong, so you know as a data how to improve. Long story short, what I really wanted to say all this time is this slide. You have different approach, different levels of capabilities and skills and different needs, and you need to coach based on the needs, and you're not the one describing the needs. That's a plot twist. So for the things that keep the green lights on, performance coaching, you need to be the best possible version of yourself. Systems of differentiation, it's transformation. You need to be up to the date, relatable at any given time. Again, blockbusters or Kodak. And systems of innovation, you need to have leaders. You need people to say, I don't think what we're doing is relevant anymore. And that's fine. It's absolutely fine. It means that you're actually learning and doing something that creates a meaning. And this is how I try to link to the coaching strategy. So how do you approach the structure, the culture, and processes, and what kind of metrics, high level, you would find useful. It is important to change the language. For me, I need to confess, it was very difficult to give a presentation without company and corporate jargon. So now that I've met it, I'm very proud because I've been in corporate for way too long, if you ask me. So I think the language matters. You don't look for consensus, you look for alignment. You need to make sure that the customers are at the front, so you are solving something for them. And especially in big corporations where usually budget is not an issue, it becomes an issue because you just want to throw money to the next shiny technology, and most probably nobody will say no, but it's not a good way because you're missing out what the customer will actually gain. I do believe that coaching is what builds value. I do believe that given the context, we need to speak differently. So if I need to discuss dollars, let's discuss dollars. You can find now a lot of information, a lot of data, so you should be finding out. Did you do that? Okay. It's okay. Okay, I got the subtle note to kick out. And you can always reach out. I love solving problems. I understand this is an interesting time for Agile coaches, but we're doing the right thing, and it's going to work out as always. And we can talk dollars if we have to. Please connect. And I would really love to have your feedback. In any way, I prepared a Menti, but you can choose whatever you want. My main concern was to share my observations and hopefully leave you a little bit more confused than I find you. This way, maybe we did something. If you come with any questions, ideas, problems, I'm your person. I love this thing. And thank you very much for your time.